Welcome to today's webinar, Supporting Settlement and Integration Frontline Staff and Wellbeing, a webinar for management and leadership. And my name is Sabrina Dimitra. I'm the Director of Programs here with AMSA. And I just want to introduce really briefly the AMSA team who's here with me. I have Kana Raslan, AMSA's Multimedia Specialist, Indiro Castro de Leon, our Program Coordinator, Misrak Jakob, our Program Coordinator, and the three of them are supporting in the back end today. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much to them. And so before we get started, as a provincial umbrella association, AMSA acknowledges that BC is located on the unceded homelands of First Nations who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. We recognize the privilege that we have as settlers on this land and acknowledge that AMSA operates on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. As an organization, AMSA is committed to creating a safe space for Indigenous voices. And we also just want to acknowledge and thank our funder, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, for funding today's event. And so I'm just going to introduce our first speaker for today. And so our webinar is set up that we'll have a couple different speakers, but we'll also have time for breakout, some in the middle. And then we're going to have a larger time for Q&A at the very end, just to ensure that that we're not asking a question when it's going to be covered later in one of the presentations. So we do welcome you to submit your questions throughout, and we'll be collecting those and asking them at the very end. And we'll be using the chat for submitting those questions. And we do welcome you to submit your question in either official language. And so our first speaker today is Rita Schnarr. Rita is a registered clinical counselor and mental wellness consultant who runs a private practice in Vancouver. She holds a master's degree in counseling psychology, along with an adult education bachelor's of arts. And Rita has a career background that's unique in that she has over 35 years of experience working in the corporate world, teaching adults, designing programs, managing people, writing articles, columns, and now providing psychotherapy. And so I welcome Rita to today's event, and we'll welcome her to continue introducing herself and supporting us and diving into the content. Rita, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Well, welcome everyone, and welcome to the Burnout Response for Leaders, Understanding the Mental Health of Your People. I wanted to give a special thank you to Indira Castro de Leon and Misrak Jakob and Sabrina Dimitra for inviting me here to speak to you all today. I'm really thrilled to be invited back to present to you once again. So a little bit, you heard about my background. I'm a registered clinical therapist counselor. I'm also a mental wellness consultant. And one of the things that I love to do in my job is to help organizations such as yours to learn more and to hopefully apply a lot of the skills that I'll be teaching you today into your daily practice. So before I begin the formal part of my presentation, I wanted to show you a video that was kindly shared by one of my co-presenters today, Andrea Solness from Flow Society. Whenever anyone attends any type of training, it's so important to keep the people that we're serving in mind. So this is why we're here today, to serve and to ensure that their struggles are heard. So she shares that we are not alone, that we need new ways to support each other and to maintain our energy despite this complex and unpredictable and sometimes chaotic work environment. So this video was produced and directed by Sandrine Espy from Rescape and Flow Society. It's about 4 minutes long. It was filmed in Vancouver. So I'm going to stop my slides now, share the video, and then we'll resume the presentation.
There will always be a new social or environmental injustice that will deserve our close attention, whatever the cause or societal issue that we are currently working on. Looking back at my work commitments and the way my career has evolved, paradoxical feelings color my work as a social change maker. Skepticism, fear, doubt, passion, inspiration, hope. As a social service worker, the causes that I think are worth fighting for seem endless. Addressing professional resettlement of refugee women, expanding ethical and sustainability practices within the manufacturing industry, advocating for employee well-being, promoting access to dignified work opportunities for all, and advocating against exploitation of natural resources. From time to time, witnessing the immensity of the work ahead paralyzes and prevents me from engaging in any form. Often, the following questions come to mind. What is my power here? How could I even imagine that my work or personal engagement toward a cause I cherish has any impact or influence? Is this job worth continuing? Working in the social change sector doesn't necessarily lead to a sustainable income or ensure access to the resources we need to operate. It is also common for our efforts to be unrecognized. It is not surprising to see our energy decrease and our willingness to continue our work vanish in this context. Whether we are self-employed, contractors, or long-term staff, our work can't always offer the supportive conditions necessary to contribute to our success. What alternatives and solutions shall we then undertake to prevent ourselves and our peers from being discouraged? To prevent burnout, we can try to increase our ability to establish a support system and set professional boundaries by clarifying with our colleagues and clients what we can offer and what we cannot. We can also learn how to become less self-judgmental by accepting that the messiness and unpredictable nature of the social change sector will undoubtedly challenge our capacity and limit our impact. We all have a part to play. Collective actions are powerful. To help us move forward, we need to be clear with our intentions and the values that drive them by asking ourselves, what are we honestly trying to achieve? With whom? And what working conditions can we tolerate? Are there better ways to take care of ourselves, our peers, and the community or causes we serve?
All right. So wasn't that a beautiful video? I tell you, I've watched it a few times now in preparation for today, and it really is so empowering. And the part that really spoke to me was, what is my power? And so you're all here today to find out what little nugget you have in that support system that your people, your frontline staff, and your clients need. So as we saw in what Sandrine eloquently spoke of in this video, over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be covering topics to hopefully help all of you executive directors and leaders attending today to hopefully leave with a broader understanding of what Sandrine spoke of. And so we're going to be looking at what is burnout, the prevalence of burnout and mental health issues, predominantly in Canada. We're going to consider some of the workplace factors that you can control. We're going to recognize some of the signs and the symptoms of burnout and mental health problems as well. We're going to look at, the lies that we tell ourselves and our employees tell themselves in order to try and get through it. We're going to look at prevention strategies, some of the support recovery at work strategies that you can incorporate. And then finally, we'll look at additional resources that will hopefully, equip you with further support and knowledge for both your own professional and personal self-care, and as well as the frontline staff that you manage. So let's look at the official definition of burnout. So burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. It's caused by high amounts of prolonged stress. So I really want to highlight the prolonged stress. Okay. And it's also stress and coupled with this inadequate support resources that causes the burnout. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm stressed out, I'm burned out. It's not quite as simple as that. It's when it's coupled with inadequate resources. So I'm going to really be hammering in on that because that's what burnout is when we have this long-term stress with no support in place to help either your employee or yourself get through it. So while it's not considered a mental illness, burnout is actually considered an issue. It is a mental health issue. So according to the Journal of Applied Biobehavioral Research, burnout is having actually a growing impact on workplaces, especially we're seeing this in the advanced economies and during times of economic downturn, which we're seeing right now in our economy with the recession. So data shared by the Gallup shows that a third of all workers always or very often feel burned out at work. So even with the job market with opportunities, we're still seeing workers across the world that are feeling overworked, disengaged, and burned out. Nearly 50% of employees and 53% of managers, which is you guys here, report that they burned out at work. So according to this new research that Microsoft, they surveyed 20,000 people in 11 countries between July and August of last fall, and this is what they came up with. So 50 and 53%. So it's quite high. It's it's not something that we can ignore, and we absolutely need to do something about it. So that's why we're here today. So now the pandemic shutdown, has happened. And a lot of people think, okay, great, burnout is going to be reduced and stress is going to be reduced as a result. But unfortunately, that hasn't been the case at all. A year ago, the Mental Health Research of Canada, they surveyed 5,500 working Canadians about well-being, and 35% of those people polled actually reported still feeling burned out. So it's one of these, mental health parameters that are tracked by the organization on a continuing basis. And unfortunately, the results are still not very good. As we all have heard in the news, in some sectors, the burnout rate is absolutely critical, especially in the healthcare industry. 66% of nurses, they report feeling burned out. And 61% of mental health workers have the same issue as well. So we have to be very, very mindful of that, those people who are looking after people. Looking at the Center of Addiction, they also provide some interesting stats as well. They estimated that the economic cost of a mental illness in Canada is more than $50 billion annually. That's just a ton of money. And so the lost productivity piece is $6.3 billion. So, we're looking at a significant amount of money here that's being impacted from burnout. 33% or 35% of the workers surveyed by the MHRC last year, they also said that they didn't have access to proper programs in the workplace to prevent that burnout. So this is why we're here today. We need to come up with some ways to help people like this, as you see in this picture, who are, really stressed out. They're just not able to cope very well. And so we need to come up with some really good strategies and some skills to better address what's going on in the workplace. And so hopefully today you'll walk away with a few little tips to apply into your job. So can anyone guess what the 5 biggest stressors for Canadians are? And we can, put it in the chat if you wish. I can open up the chat. I just want to get some people guessing. So the 5 biggest stressors for Canadians, and just type in some guesses. And if you want, you can unmute yourself and jump in as well. Okay, we got childcare, financial, housing, yeah, work, money, children, spouse, money, okay. Any other guesses? Debt, yeah, climate change, interesting, okay. Any other guesses? Family issues, Yeah, health, work stress. Okay, we got work stress in there. Okay, good. Okay, we'll stop that there. So that's great. So the answer, according to what they show, is job and work. So 45% of jobs are causing the main stressors for people in Canada. Again, this is a Canadian study. Next was finances at 22%. So some of you guys guessed that right. Children, 14%. So that was just kind of in the middle there. And then health, 9%. That kind of surprised me, especially after we just, came through a pandemic. You'd think that people were a lot more nervous about either getting COVID or having health related issues, but it was only 9% last year. And then school and studying, 7%. That was the lowest in this Globe and Mail survey. So if your kids are telling you that they're really super stressed out and burned out, you can tell them, hey, it's only 7%. No excuse, do your homework. So that's kind of an interesting statistics for us to consider and think about. So another question that I wanted to pose to you is, what types of people are prone to burnout? So again, let's go into the chat. Take a guess. What kinds of people are prone to burnout? Take a guess. Okay, we have women, everyone, working moms. Some good guesses there. Okay, any other guesses? The types of people, teens, newcomers, yeah. Okay, children, okay, we got some good ones. Perfectionists, okay, we got some ones that are close to what I have on the list here. Okay, good, thank you. So the answer is, it's people who don't exercise. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have to get out there and exercise. So these are the types of factors that are predisposing some people to burning out more than others. So if you're not exercising, if you're obese, if you're a heavy drinker, a lot of my clients who come to me with issues relating to burnout, a lot of them have substance abuse issues and are drinking quite a bit to cope. Women, so many of you guys said that women are definitely more susceptible to burnout, and I think we can all guess why. We're known to be multitaskers, taking on way more than men in some cases. And so it's interesting also that it's higher amongst young people. So more than half of the people between the ages of 18 to 29 say that they're feeling burned out. So this is more than twice as likely than the older working Canadians. And that was, again, surveyed just in February of last year. Perfectionists, I saw that in the answers as well. Very high expectations of self. Perfectionists don't like to delegate their work. They want to just try and do it all themselves and prove to the world that I can do it. So, this is often coupled with the type A personality that we see, which is typically an extroverted, very big controlling type person. And so you see that in burnout as well. And sometimes the core reason for these people who have these types of personalities is they actually do feel quite inadequate and incompetent, and so they're overcompensating by taking on more than what they can handle, consequently resulting in burnout. So lifestyle causes the burnout is something that I definitely want to touch on as well. When I do my clinical counseling, I try and incorporate what I call the biopsychosocial approach. And what I do is I really want to better understand what's going on holistically in a person's life. So, I want to find out what is their lifestyle like. This is a massive clue into whether they're living a balanced life and actually practicing some self-care. So some of the questions that I ask are they working too much? Is there enough time for socializing and relaxing, or are they just like full on workaholic mode? Do they have close and supportive relationships? So this might include friends. This might include relatives, family, parents, it doesn't matter. But Having that connection with support is vital. We don't realize how important that is. And I think that during the pandemic, we all saw that for ourselves when we were forced to be isolated from our friends and family for a period of time. That was really tough. And I was counseling online, for about almost 3 years. And the number one issue that I saw was people not coping well because of that lack of connection with others. So it was very difficult. So the other lifestyle thing is taking on too many responsibilities without the help of others. And that's both in the workplace and at home. They just try to do it all. And, I talked about women tend to do that quite a bit, and we need to ask for help a little bit more than we usually do. Not getting enough sleep. Sleep is a very important issue. People who are burned out are not sleeping enough. You should be sleeping a minimum of 7 hours. If that's an issue, there's a ton of resources and support that can be given from a clinician to get that back in order for you. I have here a symptoms checklist that is really handy to use if you want to pass this along to your frontline staff, or you can do it yourself. And this is to help you determine if there's any support needed, or maybe you need to see, hey, did I answer yes to any of these, and what do I need to do to maybe get further support for myself or provide support to my frontline staff by understanding these symptoms. So I'm going to ask you to just take a look at these symptoms on the screen and choose the ones that you think you would score a yes to, you would choose yes to, sometimes or no. So I'll just give you a few seconds here to just have a quick perusal and choose which one pertains to you. And if you find that you have a lot of yeses, I'm going to suggest that you get some support for sure, because as leaders, we absolutely need to be, strong for our staff and be aware of our own symptoms so that we can support others as in your leadership role. So I'll be speaking to these symptoms a little bit more, and these will be made available to you, of course, in your resources following the program. Can anyone guess how long it takes to beat burnout? How long does it take to beat burnout? Any guesses? Maybe we'll just go into the chat function again. Just a couple of guesses here. How many? It's actually in years. So specifically, how many years? So the answer is actually, it's actually 3 years. 3 years for burnout recovery to take place. So you really want to try and get preventative so that you're not having people needing to take 3 years in order to recover from the aftermath of experiencing burnout. So I'd like to now touch on the 3 levels of burnout. So the 3 levels that we need to be aware of is, first of all, stage 1. This is the stress arousal stage. And in therapy, we often talk about the fight, flight, freeze response. I'm sure many of you guys have heard of that. And so that is what we do. That's what the amygdala part of our brain, I call it the SOS part of our brain. That's what it does when it perceives that there's a lot of stress. And when you feel very anxious and irritable, you can sometimes avoid, or you take off, or you can freeze, or you end up arguing and fighting more. So that would be stage 1. So that would be something that you would look out for in your employees. Stage 2 is then exhaustion. So you start to see this, people trying to conserve their energy. You're noticing their behaviors changing. They're late. They're procrastinating. They're turning in work late. It becomes more noticeable. Okay, you're like, oh, there's a problem here. So, so that's a red flag for you. Stage 3 is exhaustion. So, they can no longer conserve any energy that they've been trying to hang on to with dear life. And you start to notice this chronic sadness, depressive symptoms, and in the worst case scenario, God forbid, suicidal ideation. So really important that as executive directors here, that you catch these noticeable behavioral and mental depletions earlier on, so that you're not dealing with this, and that would possibly lead to having to leave work for quite an extended period of time. And that's when I end up coming in and supporting these people when they're off, when they've actually burned out, and I'm having to bring them back to work because of the burnout that they experienced. So, some of the things that we can notice if left unaddressed is the poor physical health, clinical depression. We saw that in stage 3. People start to show they have reduced job satisfaction. The productivity goes downhill. You start to notice, that their absenteeism is increased. They have increased risk of accidents. If they're in doing like a very manual job, they're making more mistakes. Their morale is also really impacted. So you can just tell, like, they're just not there mentally. They're not happy. They're shutting down. They give up on replying to emails or calling people back. They become kind of isolated, or they just leave. They will leave. They're just not, they don't want to put up with it anymore. So they will either leave the organization, or they'll take a leave of absence up to 3 years or longer. I really like this diagram because it shows the how burnout and the brain look like. So I'm going to try and explain this a little bit. So I want you to start here in this part here where it says, what is burnout? So again, I want to stress that stress doesn't cause burnout. Okay, so stress and inadequate support resources causes burnout. So the two together. All right. So over here in this part of the diagram, what is burnout? So, it was coined by Hubert Freudenberger back in 1974. And so it is a chronic psychosocial stress. Okay. That's what it is. It's chronic. And so when the demands of the job, okay, so here's your job, outweighs the resources to cope, then you have the burnout. Okay, so this is where the imbalance is. Okay, I love visuals. I find this visuals very helpful. And so what happens is then it causes a crisis, and then people start to go, oh my God, I can't do my job. I suck. I can't do this. And they put on a front, or they try to pretend everything's good in some cases. But really it's impacting the body, it's impacting the brain. And so the symptoms start to really show up there. There's a lot of cynicism and depletion, fatigue. And so so it just leads into, people really not feeling good at their jobs. And so oftentimes they will abandon the career, which for you guys means turnover, which costs money. And so the cycle continues. So this is important to remember just some of the key points in this diagram here. So I'd like to now focus more on what leaders should look out for in staff that might have mental health issues. So we were talking about burnout. So now I want to look at more at the mental health issues, and I want to explain the 3 different types of issues that you should be aware of. So obviously on the left-hand side, we have people who are healthy mentally. They have the capacity to think, to feel and act in ways that enhance their ability to enjoy life, and they can deal with challenges well. So that's what we're striving for, right? That's what we want. So when we have mental health issues, that is where the burnout shows up. Okay, so that's the middle category here. And so this is when there's a diminished capacity for enjoying life and interacting with society and environment. It really starts to affect their thinking, their feeling mood, their behaviors. So you start to notice, again, sometimes addictions, People are, going home and they're drinking a bottle of wine just to cope with the day. And so, depression creeps in, and then further isolation, and then anxiety. I just treated a client with a panic disorder because she was going through burnout at work. Predominantly because of a manager who micromanaged to death. She was too aggressive, micromanaged to the point she didn't trust her employees. And consequently, there were, out of the 8 people that worked in her team, 6 people walked off the job all at once. Like, this is actually a true story. They walked off, they could not deal with it anymore. So as we all have heard before, people generally leave bosses, not the company. So it's really important that as leaders today, that we are in touch with our employees. And I'll give you some tips and advice on how to maybe incorporate that into your daily practice. So when we look at mental illness, burnout is not a mental illness, as I mentioned at the start. Okay, so it's not a mental illness. Mental illness is definitely something that can affect people, and it can cause depression and anxiety in a serious way. And so at this point, they should definitely be seeing a counselor like myself. We generally use cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy to help people to better manage their thoughts, their behaviors, how to cope better. And we teach very good, helpful skills to help them to recover from the burnout so they can get them back at work sooner than later. So as leaders, I want you to think about anybody maybe on your team right now that may have some of these noticeable warning signs of problems that are going on. So I just want you to just think, okay, your team, who am I noticing as of late that are consistently late, where they are lacking cooperation? They're always complaining about being tired, or they have unexplained pains. Okay, they're forgetful. They make excuses all the time for missed deadlines or poor work. They show less interest or involvement in work, and they show more anger and defensiveness. Okay, so think about that, and maybe write down their name for yourself so that, maybe tomorrow you can incorporate a plan of action on how to follow up and help these people so that they're no longer stuck. So some of the other telltale signs that an employee may have is, you're going to notice that there's a change in their work patterns, and sometimes it's gradual and sometimes it's very sudden. And have you seen people where they just go into fight, flight, freeze response? They just like, I'm gone. I can't take another day of this. This is it. I quit. So that could be very sudden. Other people, they're a little more subtle, especially the perfectionists, because they're trying to show that I've got it all together. I'm cool. I got it. But it's all a front, right? So, so when you start to notice, oh, their work's just something's wrong, and use your intuition too. I mean, as a leader, you were hired because of your ability to manage and use your intuition, and so you want to be able to notice, they're not getting along very well with their coworkers. They did before, there's a change here, attitude issue. And, I'm really noticing that, they're really anxious, or they're just down, or she's crying a lot, or he's crying a lot, or he's doing this or that. So when you start to see this change, that is a huge red flag for you to go, okay, I need to do a little bit of a check-in here. So here's a question that I'm going to pose to everybody here. Again, jump on the chat. Why would an employee not tell you about their mental health problem? Why wouldn't they tell you? So I'll just open up the chat. Let's see what you have to say. Okay, we got fear, stigma, afraid of getting fired. Yeah. Okay, fear of loss of job. Those are excellent ones. Yeah, worried about their job. Lack of trust. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Oh, these are so good. Shame, feeling ashamed, embarrassed. Yeah. Excellent ones. Thank you so much for throwing in. Yeah, not trusting enough. They don't even recognize it. So this is great. You guys are really guessing well here for sure. So you've got it. Stigma. Okay. Stigma is massive. People are afraid that if it's found out that they have burnout, that they're weak, that something's wrong with them. Oh, look at you can't handle it. And so they're worried that this is going to leave them open to discrimination. And especially the people that you're serving, they're new to Canada in some cases, and they're nervous, and they're like, oh my God, I need to feed my family, and I can't lose this job. And so they don't want anybody to know that they're weak in any way, right? And so they worry that, oh geez, if I say anything, there's going to be limited opportunities for advancement, or I might not even get a job, or they might not hire me or keep me. And so, a lot of times they don't know who to talk to. They don't know what to say, especially if they're new in Canada and they're not sure, how to handle things in our country. So, and for your employees, it's the same thing, whether you're, a Canadian citizen or not, or new resident. We really need to create this safety. And someone mentioned safety, and I'm going to speak to that very shortly. So a lot of times they don't even realize that there is an accommodation policy for mental health issues because it's not promoted enough. The organization simply has not given that information out in a way that people can see it. They're reminded about it. Oh, if I'm feeling this way, or if something's off, I have this option. This is something I can do. And so it's really important to, I really want to highlight this, that, a lot of times some people don't even realize that there's something wrong because they're in this survival mode of working. And some people are in denial. They don't want to face the fact that there is something wrong because they know the consequences could cost them their job. So the lies that we tell ourselves, this is something that relates to, to burnout in a huge way, because, we can be our worst own liars, again, as a way of coping. And the 53% of the managers, that might include some of you listening to me today, might hear yourself saying this, from time to time. Oh, I'm fine. Oh, it's you're nagging at me. That's stressful. Like, and oh, I love my job. And oh, I'm happy to take more on. Give it to me. I can handle it. Or I'm just a little tired today. Oh, you don't understand. No one else can do this. It's only me. I'm the smartest one in the room. I have to do this, and so these are the dialogues that are going on in our brain, right? But this too shall pass. I can get, I need to get back on top of my game. Oh, if I take a vacation, it's going to be fine. If people just let me do my job, I would be fine. So these are the lies. So, if this might be true if you're okay and you're not having any of these burnout symptoms, but if you are and you're saying this, obviously there's a misalignment in how you're doing. So I would like to speak to now how to make your people more likely to disclose that they have a mental health problem. So I created this little diagram here because I wanted to kind of show what I mean by creating the safe space for your people. So an organization is the fundamental, okay? It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So to have this security for your people, the punishment has to not be tolerated at any level in the organization, okay? So whether it's punishment or meaning in their minds, it would be punishment. Oh, if I have burnout and I tell someone about it, I'm not going to be punished for it. That's what I mean by punishment. And so they know that if they go and talk to someone and they know that they're going to be supported in the middle level here, then they will share and open up only if they feel that it is going to remain private and confidential. Private and confidential, okay? So if they don't trust you as a leader and they are afraid that the word's going to get out, they will most likely not say anything, and it's up to you to try and create that safe space. But it'll be a lot easier as a leader for you to create this part here if this is promoted earlier on. So what we know for sure is that employee burnout is getting worse. Okay, employers, we have work to do. So here's a funny discussion. I need to take an extended medical leave to deal with my job-related stress. The stress is degrading my cardiovascular system. I could drop dead at any time. So the manager is like, well, which part of your job is causing stress? I think it's the work part. So obviously quite a general answer. So we often as leaders have to dig a little bit, right? We have to find out what's causing this prolonged stress at work that's not being supported for that particular person, because everyone has different degrees of being able to handle it, right? So some other companies, I just want to share what other companies are doing and what they've done and what's worked for them to reduce their burnout rates and turnover as a result. They have flexible paid time off. They encourage employees to take their vacation time. Okay, I can't tell you how many companies don't push people to take their time off, or people are afraid that if they take the time off, it's going to make them look like they're not hardworking employees. And so they sacrifice that time to restore by not taking a vacation time, and they kind of build on it for years at times. So some companies like Clio, they have what they call an invest in yourself day every month to recharge themselves. You can do things like offering a place of refuge at work. So having like a lounge or a little garden, or maybe like a little resting room, a place where people can lay down. I remember one of my offices that I worked at years ago, they used to call it the sick room, and people who were feeling a little bit tired and they needed some time out, they could go and lay down and they could close the door. Library. Like have little places where people can go and connect or rest. Mental health coverage for counseling. If you don't have that in the form of an assistant employee program or counseling dollars per year, I highly suggest that be incorporated into a benefits plan if that's something that you can do in your particular society and office. It's very important that people have access to mental health support. I will provide free options if that is not an option for you, okay? And yeah, giving people the time off is needed. It's better than them quitting, and then you have to find someone else to replace them. So Miss Archibald of Clio this is a quote that she said, "We're trying to debunk this idea that providing flexibility and autonomy for employees to manage their energy and their needs are going to somehow yield to negative performance or impact business results. That is simply not true for us." So in other words, they feel that the more flexibility, the more autonomy you can give your employees, the better and the more empowered they feel. And I'm going to use the word micromanaging again. For many people, that can be very stressful, especially when it's done in a way that is not the way they want to be managed. So the key is really trying to find out what it is that your people need, and it has to be done on an individual basis. Okay, so here is all this information that we need to share with one another. Okay, so the manager to the person, making sure you're all on the same boat. So you want to be able to provide clear expectations. You want to make sure that they know about the necessary resources and the skills that they need to meet the expectations of your office, of the organization. Having this ongoing training so that, if they feel like they can't handle their job, you want to make sure that they have the onboarding necessary, the training either at the onboarding or throughout their careers, so that they feel like they've got the skills and the tools to be able to handle the job. Okay. Help them to understand What value do they bring to your organization, right? What contributions? A lot of people don't even realize they're we forget to say, oh my gosh, you're doing such a great job. Maybe let's review what went well for you over the last couple of weeks or last month or last 3 months. So having these check-ins, these reviews, very, very important. And at that point, you can see whether their work hours are reasonable, whether they're able to meet the expectations and so on. So, you want to assess their workload. You want to make sure that you set reasonable and realistic expectations, okay? Encouraging the social support, encouraging movement throughout the day, especially if they're working at home. Sometimes, I had clients who, when they actually became workaholics working from home because they didn't have anything to look forward to. There was no potlucks, there was no get-togethers, there was nothing to really look forward to. So they just hammered down in front of the computer and worked like for 12-hour days. And so they actually ended up burning out working at home. It was quite interesting. So one thing that I will be providing as a task improvement process PDF that you can use to sit down with your people. And that way you guys can work out what is reasonable and realistic with them, and work out a plan that will make sense for both of you. I also like to encourage the importance of looking at yourself, okay? Assessing yourself as a leader. How psychologically safe are you? So I have a link here that I'll send out that you can click on and do this assessment to see if you do need to tweak any of your own emotional intelligence skills, and if you need some further training or assistance, that's something I can help you with. I work with leaders all the time with that. We provide psychologically safe workshops. And again, it's resources to help people in management and union roles to be able to understand how your behavior or your ways of leading might be harmful, if perceived not helpful by either the coworkers or your direct reports. So the support recovery at work. So very, very important that you develop an employee plan. And so I was mentioning the need to sit down with your employees as much as possible and be able to ask them to recognize their successes, look for opportunities to help them, to support others. Because sometimes when we have people help others, and it just changes things up for them, as long as they're not type A or overachievers. You want to give them that opportunity to be able to help others and support others as well. Not replace other people's jobs or what they're supposed to be doing, but support, maybe coaching, mentoring, that kind of a thing. Okay, so helping them to prioritize their work with more manageable and clear expectations. Maybe they think they're supposed to be doing X amount, and when really you need them to do only 5 out of the 10, and in their minds it's 8 or 9. So clarifying that. When you have people who are overachievers, it's important that you think about ways to help them to avoid not overhelping. And I mentioned in the previous slide, it's good for them to help, but with overachievers, watch it, because again, this can be their way of trying to overcompensate. And so you need to help them to see that that's too much. You want to give high performers choices. All right. So instead of saying, oh, I want you to do all of this, and you see that they're burning out as a result, give them choices so that you can find a better balance for them. And watch out for the yes people. Okay. People are saying yes to absolutely everything. That's another clue. So let's say you notice an overachiever on your team. So these are some words that you can think about and ask yourself, like, what are you doing in each of these categories to help your employee embody balance at work, so that, for example, their perfectionism and perhaps their overachieving ways don't lead to burnout? Are you offering the flexibility? Are you communicating? Are you thoughtful? Are you practicing kindness, empathy? I have a whole workshop just on empathy. Okay. The need to listen and empathize and hear your people and make them feel heard, and understanding where they're coming from, so they don't feel judged, and they're not worried about sharing that there's something wrong. So these actions are really important. So I like to use SMART goals. And so SMART goals are what you can do when you sit down with your employee and ask them, so what exactly do you want to achieve? You want measurable. How will you know when they've achieved it? Attainable. Is this something that you have control over? They have control over, I should say. Relevant. Is it important in their life right now or in their job right now? Time bound. What is their deadline? Is it realistic? So I have this SMART goal template that I'll also share with you to use. And this is a great little tool to use when you're sitting down with your employees to work out maybe a project or a work task that they're concerned about. And you can work out an action plan. You can work out like what is the expected time, the actual completion date that is reasonable to everyone. So this is a really wonderful tool that you can use. Problem solving is another tool that is fantastic because it's tangible. It's a great way to strategically solve problems together. You can identify specifically what the problem is and then come up with solutions together. Do pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, which one's the best option, and then what do they need to make it happen? So as a leader, if they need your support in any way, then you jump in and provide that support. Keeping an eye on the time here. And so just a couple of final things before I wrap up. Just remember that 1 in 5 people will experience a mental illness in our lifetime. Okay. With early and appropriate treatment and support, the great majority of people with mental health problems do recover. So that is really great news. Okay. Most can work actually throughout the recovery period. So that's other good news. And before disciplining an employee for poor performance, really consider if they have a mental health problem. You want to promote these programs and whether it's online or getting together in a supportive environment with others in the office. Really promote that. You need to hammer in on developing these organizational standards. I have this picture up just because I have a couple of cats. I'm a cat owner. And as we all know, it's really hard to herd cats, right? So, as a leader, it's your job now to figure out the best way to better understand the behavioral patterns of your people, maybe try to gather them together. And if you can't gather them, like this guy's clearly having an issue with these cats, sometimes you need to go to them. You need to go to the cat. You got to figure out, are there any cat fights going on? What's going on? What that you need to do to help to address the issues? And so you can think of that as a way of dealing. Some supports. So the Canadian Mental Health Association, they have phenomenal free resources called Bounce Back. I will provide this all in the handouts that we give you. Anxiety Canada has they've got podcasts and online treatment programs, group programs, all sorts of things there. Workplace strategies for mental health, a phenomenal amount of assessments and modules and free resources for leaders and employees as well. So these are all the things that we talked about, and lots of information there that I hope you will hopefully take away and apply in your life and at work. Here's my information if you do need any further support. It'll be made available to you as well. And in the 3 languages that I'm familiar with, thank you, merci, and obrigado in Portuguese. I want to thank you for attending today's presentation. I really appreciate your time and the interest in this topic. And so, yeah, I wish you well this coming year and as you apply all these things, and I'll see you later in the Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, vielen Dank und bedankt, Rita. Those were my 2 languages that I saw there. I just wanted to say thank you so much there was so much that I learned, and there's still things that are going through my head as I was jotting down some notes. So thank you so much. And so We will have a time and opportunity to ask Rita questions, at the end together with all of our other speakers. So if you have questions, please feel free to just submit those in the chat, and we'll look to connect and collect all of those for later.
And so our next two speakers for today are Andrea Solis and Diana Jeffries. And so Andrea is an adult educator, resource developer, and yoga instructor who's passionate about finding ways to use her skills and experience to respond to the increasing complexities of learning spaces, workplaces, and communities. Andrea works alongside community organizations, equity-seeking groups, educators, and artists to commune spaces and create resources for well-being, connection, and collective learning. Our next speaker, who's going to kind of co-present together with Andrea, is Diana Jeffries. Diana works in the education and the community services sector in various different capacities. Diana currently runs education support services for Atari Women's Resources Society and provides facilitation and resource development with Flow Society. Diana is passionate about community and improving mental health, creativity, and support in safe spaces, and is committed to education practices that facilitate meaningful connections that are strength-based and that highlight the resilience of those who she serves. So I'm going to pass and hand over the floor now to Andrea and Diana. Welcome. Great to have you joining us today.
Thanks, Sabrina. It's great to be here. And good afternoon to everybody, and thank you also for being here. I just want to thank AMSA for making space for this really critical topic and bringing us together. I feel like we're really so fortunate to be co-presenting with Rita and also Amanda, who you will hear from later, to offer such a breadth of knowledge and resources and strategies in a real world. And over the next 45 minutes or so, Diana and I are going to lead you through some approaches and strategies to support greater well-being in the workplace that we've found to be really relevant in the current context of community service delivery. And then as part of our set, we're going to offer you an opportunity to get together in breakouts to share some of the strategies you've been using or you'd like to activate in your organizations and in the sector that you're hearing about today. So Diana and I both have many years experience in the settlement sector as instructors and manager. And currently we have opportunities to work with a number of organizations in settlement and community in finding ways to really prioritize well-being and collective learning in our workplaces, as well as our communities. So we see, as you do, this need for a shift in how we approach health and well-being of people in our organizations. But we also have been able to see and be part of some really creative ways to do this that you are doing in this challenging time. So we offer this here, knowing that many of you are doing some of these things already. Some of them might be unrealistic at this point in time in a nonprofit setting. And some may be an opening for you in your various roles to try something new, but all by way of saying we're sort of trying to present a bit of a smorgasbord of all the things that might be possible and hope that it generates some sparks and some discussions about what we can kind of work towards collectively. So before we dig into that, we're going to have Diana is going to lead us in just a short grounding practice.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our session today. So just before we get into the nuts and bolts of what we are talking about, I just want to give us an opportunity to feel a little bit more grounded. It's been a while. We've been sitting for a bit. So just a little stretch and a little breathing activity before we move on. So if you want just to bring your arms up over your head and just give yourself a nice big stretch from side to side. And then take your arms down and maybe turn in your chair and stretch the side of your shoulders and your midsection by putting your hand on your left leg and then twisting around, then looking behind you just for a second. That should stretch out your back and your chest area, and then do the other side as well. So left arm on right leg, take the back of your chair if you can, and twist. Okay, and come back to center. And then we'll just take 3 deep breaths through the nose and then release the breath through the mouth. Keep both feet planted on the ground, firmly secure and feeling grounded in where you are. Drop your shoulders down and try and bring your spine straight so that you are sitting comfortably but upright in your chair. No slouching. So we'll just take 3 deep breaths in, breathe in, and then slowly release the breath through the mouth, but very slowly, like a deflated balloon. And breathe in and release. And last time, you can breathe in and release. And just know that you are here now and that we have this time together. So hopefully you can take note of what we are saying, and even just applying this to your practice for yourself and for staff at your staff meetings. It's really helpful. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Andrea, who's going to continue on.
Yeah, so we've already jumped in. So basically our segment here is a short grounding session we've done. We're going to walk you through what we have sort of curated as fundamentals and related strategies, practices, challenges, and resources for supporting staff and well-being. So there's this presentation. We also curated a list of resources that correspond to the fundamentals that we're covering together that AMSA will be sending you out after the presentation. And then we're going to go into a short case study, small case study, and a small group discussion in breakouts. So just to give you a bit of an overview of what we're talking about in the next 30 minutes, which I think really overlaps and complements what Rita has been talking about as applied to the sector that we're in. So the fundamentals are starting with, we've put them this way because sort of recognizing that these are all related, they're all different ways into possible entry points into supporting well-being in your organizations in the sector. So starting with knowing that people are valued, cared for, and trusted. The second one, psychologically healthy places, which Rita spoke to and we'll touch on very briefly, talking about stress and trauma as a given reality in our workplaces, individually and collectively, and how we can still acknowledge that and carry on in the work we do. The importance of collaboration, the effectiveness of collaboration, and the importance of connection in these times of isolation and division. Collective learning, that as organizations, as sectors, if we're all contributing and all learning from each other, how much more power there is in that. Systems and social structures, again, an acknowledgement that we're working with systems and social structures and that make access to wellness more difficult for some than others, and ways we can start to address that. And finally, we just want to touch base a little bit more on skill building, some strategies around approaching how you can build skills in the organization. So Diana and I are going to kind of take turns covering off these 7 fundamentals. So I'm going to cover the first 2. So fundamentally, people flourish and organizational impact increases when they know they are valued, cared for, and trusted. the approach that we're offering for this is to consider alignment of your values, mission, and purpose as an organization with the experiences that people are actually having inside the organization as staff. I'm not going to say a lot on this because I know that the presenter following us, Amanda, has done some amazing work on this, and she'll be sharing a very real context. Just very briefly, creating space to share, for people to share their whole selves. And Rita talked about celebrations and potlucks and those sorts of things. Maybe weekly email polls to connect with people on an issue important to them outside of work. What's their day? What's their word for the year? Kind of polls or questions. And the small acts of kindness, like, hey, I'm making a run to the coffee shop. What can I get you? Just those sorts of things that recognize people are working hard, offering flexible hours and location where possible. Apply care and wellness practices at all levels of the organization. I just feel like I really want to stress this because everybody needs to be taken care of. We need to do a better job of taking care of each other. So, it's obviously we're focusing on frontline staff and taking care of the staff that you're leading, but it's also all levels need that care and need that space to make sure they're taking care of themselves and that they're able to then also take care of others. Just reflecting on how you're showing up. So again, going back to our values as organizations, we're often creating a sense of belonging for newcomers and just thinking in terms of your own, how you're arriving. Are you creating a sense of belonging for others? And are you showing that there's time to support people in being part of a healthy workplace for individuals and collectively? Psychologically healthy and safe workplaces recognize the significant impact mental health has on overall workplace performance and culture. And Rita's covered this really well. So the approach here, fostering a psychologically healthy workplace through leadership with care and mindfulness, and I would add consistency, recognizing that everyone has a responsibility in contributing to a healthy and safe workplace. I suggestion to build, when you're building that picture of what an emotionally safe place looks like, really making sure you're drawing on input from your teams about what that means to them, creating natural and consistent pathways to dialogue. So whether that's opening meetings with a really meaningful sharing of where people are at, or the lunchroom chat, and just a way for people to creating ways for people to connect regularly on things that are important to them. Demonstrate your own vulnerability. In the resources that we're sharing, I shared an Adam Grant podcast. I don't know if anyone follows him, but he is doing some really interesting, he's a scientist, I think, but he's doing some really interesting podcasts on how we live, work, and lead. And he interviews a fellow and asks it, who is suggesting, as leaders, you share aspects of your own performance evaluation that maybe you didn't do very well on, and ask your people you work with to help you on that. I don't know if that's something you would consider, but I thought it was an interesting conversation and encourage you to listen to. The importance of verbal and nonverbal communication skills, and just, to allowing capacity building for staff at all levels to have the skills that you feel, to build the skills that you feel reflect a healthy, the work culture that you want to cultivate in terms of well-being. Suggested to create, many of you already have mental health committees to organize events, programs, social opportunities, resources. So again, recognizing that it's not all on the shoulders of the leaders, but it's working together at different levels in different ways to address wellness, well-being. And that's Diana is going to talk to you about this.
So I think that, stress and trauma are realities of our current world, no doubt, not only within the settlement sector, but within our own lives, with the financial crisis, housing crisis, various wars around the world, and yet we are all still required and need to carry on in spite of all the stresses and potential trauma that we face. We are not only are the people in our community working with trauma, but we also may experience it ourselves. And so acknowledging that the stress and traumas that are ongoing, and we need to provide those safe spaces and resources to share with our team so that they know that they are also being cared for in the same way that we are also trying to share and care for the clients and participants in the programs that we work with. So I think that's really important, and because I work so closely in a frontline position myself with Atira, but checking in with people to make sure that they're managing their workload, and when people are not managing, helping them to develop self-care strategies as they need, and you can actually come up with some of those suggestions for them. So things like monitoring people you are working with to make sure they're feeling safe and they're able to do the job that they are being asked to do. Do they have the skills, knowledge, and ability to do the job effectively? And if they don't, what are some strategies that you can take to help them to get to that place? If not finding that, then maybe you can offer some peer support programs that really can be very helpful for not only new staff, but other staff that are really struggling with the positions that they have. I think regularly updating and informing staff on what outside supports are available. Rita did talk to this about how many organizations have ongoing benefit that with their benefits, they may have counseling support and well-being strategies that they can access through their benefit program. And so I often find that employees are not aware of those benefits, and it's up to managers and senior supervisors to really make sure that not only the new staff that are being onboarded get access to those resources, but that there's updated and maybe emails sent out to the entire team to tell them that these resources are available for them to access when and if they need. Sometimes they can be forgotten about by staff, so just those reminders are really helpful. Also, another idea could be to offer an opportunity for staff to come together and maybe they have some really great skills on self-care that they take on, and having a sort of shared digital co-created file that you can share with your team about what people are doing to support their well-being. And it may be like notices of free art gallery nights or free swimming passes or opportunities to get together for a hike if that is something that people want to do. Just even if people don't do it, it's just that those opportunities are available in those kind of share files, and it helps to really build that solidarity between teams that is really, really important for people's sense of self-care. Checking in with people, I think, is just one of the key things that I would say that's really important here. And just understanding that, all of the life is messy, and what people are going through is not always clear to managers and supervisors. So that's why those check-ins are so important. And it doesn't have to be a formal thing. It can just be meeting up in the coffee room, whatever, but just making sure that you are really trying to stay on top of the teams that you're working with, so that their self-care is really considered a priority for their employment position, that they're also really feeling like they're being taken care of. Yeah, so I'm going to go back to Andrea for the next slide.
Yeah, and this really builds a little bit on some of what Diana was just saying, but the fundamental that choice and collaboration and connection support both professional development and personal development. So the approach here is to co-create an environment of collective learning and growth. I'm sharing here a testimonial from a Frontline settlement provider that was shared in the context of another project. What we need for action is collaboration, support, and collective intent. Within our organizations, there are many divides when what we need most is to act as a community. We need more empathy, resources, and learning together. So again, finding different ways that's supposed to be a bullet there, but provide opportunities for staff to get to know each other, whether that's sharing a meal, some of the activities that Diana mentioned, like outside of doing activities outside of the work time, organizing those for people to come together in an activity that they want to do or that is meaningful for them. Supporting cross-team collaboration in work projects, I think really speaks to that, how it supports both professional and personal development. Diana and I both had an opportunity years ago to work in a small settlement team that Link and Settlement and MAP at the time were being offered in close proximity to each other. And it just created so many opportunities for us to work with each other and understand. It provided a better understanding of the clients we were working with, and a collaborative approach to events and that we were holding, that we could pull on our client base and our expertise and our knowledge and share that. So I think that's a really rich opportunity, and obviously builds that camaraderie between staff also. Diana mentioned free or inexpensive opportunities to explore practices, such as wellness practices, such as mindfulness, meditation, yoga, compassion practices. Again, please check out the resource list that we're sharing. We've got some really good free or almost free resources that you could share with staff as a really good starting point. Consider how, offering activities outside the workplace, which we've referred to. Again, this is really a chance to honor unique needs and differences, understanding that some activities art gallery trip will appeal to some and not others, and a hike in nature on a Saturday morning will appeal to some and not others. Building short practices, such as the one Diana shared with you, into meetings. Offer time off. Offer time off in lieu of self-selected wellness activities may feel aspirational for the nonprofit sector, but I think that we should, aim for it. I know places like Rita mentioned one, and I know Patagonia, you have time off and you do a self-selected wellness activity, and using some of these private sector practices, best practices, to start to work towards it and advocate as a sector to highlight the importance of wellness and building the capacity and the resources to maybe start building in this infrastructure that supports well-being. And then because we often don't have those resources, finding creative ways to support people with opportunities to share their passions and their challenges. Diana and I we've got here art-based projects, which Diana has led a lot of in different capacities. But we also developed a storytelling toolkit with options. And it was with options in UBC Center for Migration. And it was, again, a really collaborative effort. Options prioritized this project, which gave staff time once a week for over about a period of 2 or 3 months to work on this. And in this case, it was staff were co-creating stories with clients, but it could definitely be a peer model where within an organization, you're working on a storytelling project and really highlighting the strengths and the whatever you want to highlight in your staff and clients. So also in the resources, there's a link to that toolkit. So have a look at that and see if that sets off any sparks for you.
Shared and collective learning from diverse perspectives enhances the growth and success of individuals and organizations. So I think it's really important to really recognize that people are not just going to work to make a living. I mean, that's obviously a major part of it, but especially particularly in community service, we go to work also because we're really curious about the world, about who we work with, and newcomers in particular. It's a really interesting part of people's working life. And it's kind of a joy to have the opportunity to do this kind of work. But we also need to really think about how it is that we can engage in strength-based principles with our colleagues, with the staff, and apply these kinds of ideas of cultural humility, which basically means really thinking about listening, real actively listening to people's different perspectives and from their particular cultural backgrounds, et cetera, that as members of the settlement sector, we have a plethora of different cultural experiences. And this, by creating these conditions that allow people to contribute their own unique experiences, attributes, and skills to their jobs, to their work. So support people with opportunities to share their ideas and purpose, pursue opportunities that reflect their unique identities. There's nothing better, I think, for staff members to be able to bring in their authentic selves to the work and not only just be required to do the daily tasks, but also to apply what they know, their prior knowledge, skills, and abilities that they already have, and really be able to bring that into their current work is very inspiring for many, many people. For you to be intentional, to include the voices from all concerned in a matter, invite people to meetings where the outcomes is affecting them so they can contribute to creative solutions. So rather than that sort of top-down approach, which historically has been the way, very sort of stratified and hierarchical positions, we're really trying to move away from that, because we know that by open participation from all staff, that you're going to get better results, and people will feel like their work is more meaningful and they have more control in some of the decisions that are being made. Create a culture that encourages and sustains lifelong learning and job satisfaction. Again, so providing opportunities that maybe there is a course that people can take, and maybe they can do that course, some of that work time can be set aside to do the course in maybe a community development certificate program or whatever, that not only helps them in their pursuit of lifelong learning, but will also help the organization itself. So all of that kind of work is really going to help for inspiring and keeping people really alive and relevant in the work that they're doing, offering those opportunities not only just for new positions within an organization, but even within the position that they already have, allowing that opportunity so that they can learn and grow just like we all want to do. That is why one of the big reasons why we go to work is to learn and grow for ourselves. It's not just about picking up a paycheck. And I think that we also can understand that systemic racism, power, and privilege are complex issues that we are grappling with as a society, more and more so today. Spaces for conversations are imperative to build understanding and navigate more equitable ways forward. I mean, bringing awareness and intentionality to inequities, inequitable systems and social structures, and how you can address them is really important for people's mental health, particularly from marginalized communities. So we want to take the same perspectives that our mission statements and our vision statements that we have and really apply them to our working life in terms of our leadership capabilities to make sure that those issues can be addressed. Be willing to look at power differentials and unconscious biases in your own leadership practice. Obviously, it is unintentional often, but that sometimes we need to have that kind of self-reflection to make sure that we are practicing equitable and understanding and navigating a way forward for our staff. Advocate in your spaces of influence for more equitable access to well-being. And that might be writing proposals that include self-care and well-being money made available through maybe our IRCC proposals, for example, so that staff can maybe not only just continue on with professional development, but also consider that self-care is also a requirement now for the work that we do, and that includes self-care for our staff. And so you as leaders can advocate for those extra funding to support the staff that you work with. Support people so that they can be involved in decision-making where appropriate, inviting people from various departments that may have interest in being at meetings that on issues that you're addressing. So thinking a bit more outside the box about who can and could come to some of the meetings that can support things like social justice issues. Align organizational practices with justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And model inclusivity in your language and action. Example being avoid us and them, empower hierarchies, which lead to toxic conversations. Because no doubt that those toxic conversations and talking about other staff in really negative ways can lead to very adversarial relationships, and not only causes burnout for you, but also the staff that you're working with.
Great, thanks, Diana. I know that we need to jump right into our our breakouts. So just touching base really quickly on building skills, and really this can be revisited in work teams and throughout the organization. What I really want to highlight here is that I think it's really important that people don't feel like the skills they need to do this better is being placed on them. It's just another thing they have to do, but finding ways to really approach it together, co-creating ongoing lists that are important to everybody of skills, offering those workshops as follow-up, and peer mentorship as a way to address some of the skills that have been identified.
So I'm just going to read you this case study, and then we're going to break out into groups of 5. I believe it's probably 5. And I'm just going to ask that the French speakers remain in the main room for when we do the breakouts. So in your breakout, you're going to be asking, you're going to be going through this case study and then discussing it with your group. I'll just read it first for you, and then we'll send you off into your breakout groups. So recognizing and responding to compassion fatigue and burnout. You're managing the settlement department of a mid-sized organization in a community that has recently seen an unprecedented increase in the number of newcomers, many who have experienced war, prolonged migration periods, and other extreme conditions. A number of long-term settlement workers have left and new people have been hired, most of whom have come to Canada within the past 3 years. You are checking in with teams of meetings and here people are feeling they are not able to meet the needs of the people they are serving, and that their own mental health and physical well-being is being compromised. Your schedule is overwhelming and you feel like you are continually putting out fires. So with your group, I want you to discuss these questions. What are some of the practices and resources that can help in this situation? Consider the well-being of the people you are working with, as well as yourself, and consider solutions both short and long-term that engage various levels of organizations, as well as larger systems. So when you do your breakout, we'll give you 10 minutes or so, and then we'll just come back with putting in your thoughts in the chat box. Do you want to add on to that, Andrea?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So we can go to the breakouts.
Welcome back. So I hope we hope you had, I know 10 minutes is short. Hopefully you had a good chat with your colleagues. So just to close off this session, we'd just like you to think of one idea or approach or strategy that you heard in the breakout or that you heard today that you really would love to implement in the space that you're working in. So just give it a little bit of a thought, and then we're going to do a waterfall chat. So if everybody thinks about it and starts writing it in the chat, don't push send yet, but just think about your idea, write it in the chat, and in about 20 seconds, we'll all push send at the same time. And then we'll have this waterfall, brilliant, sparkling wellness activities or ideas that we can infuse our work with. Oh, there we go. Collaboration time. Secret appreciation note to someone. Lovely. Something in French. Oh.
Yeah, tea time.
Okay.
Use of relevant language, collaboration time. I like the social and mental health committee idea to share social get-togethers and addresses. Secret appreciation note, check-ins, flexibility and accommodation. Check in on realistic expectations about ourselves and the work.
Yeah.
Importance of thorough onboarding. Encouragement, validating, orientation, gratitude wall to post thank you notes to colleagues. That's great. Use of relevant language, collaboration on bi-weekly meetings, secret appreciation notes.
Thanks so much, everybody. And
Great.
close this portion and send it back to you, Sabrina.
Thanks so much, Diana and Andrea. That was great to hear. There was definitely a lot of great ideas that I heard. So thank you so much. And so we want to go to our final speaker for today before we head to our Q&A. And this is one of your colleagues, Amanda Vance, who's the Executive Director of the Cowichan Intercultural and Immigrant Aid Society. Prior to working in the settlement sector, Amanda was Executive Director of the Downtown Duncan Business Improvement Area Society, a business association Cowichan, where she led a variety of initiatives through the COVID-19 pandemic, including a reconciliation and language revitalization program, the Whole Communum signage project with Cowichan tribes and the city of Duncan. And so we thought it would be great to have, we've heard, from a theoretical perspective, and we got a lot of practical ideas, but we wanted to also hear from somebody from within the settlement sector to hear how are you incorporating some of these ideas and thoughts around burnout prevention, mental well-being in your organization. And so I'll look to hand it over to Amanda.
Thank you, Sabrina, and thank you to everyone who has stayed through. It's been really interesting for me to learn from Rita and Diana and Andrea. Things for me to think about as well. As mentioned, I am not an expert. I'm just a fellow leader like you. I'll also be honest that I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I know a little something personally about burnout. I've experienced it myself, and when I see it on my team, I do take it really seriously. What I'm going to focus on today is how I've been keeping us together this year, staff well-being and retention, and the strategies that we've used at Cowichan Intercultural Society. So what I'm going to go over today, I'm going to start with an introduction, a little bit about how many people we have retained this year, what the situation was when I started, what the foundational CIS culture was that I had to build on, because even though we had some challenges when I started, there was a lot of really great stuff to work with there. I'm going to go through 3 different slides with examples of how we support staff. I've broken it down to material supports, emotional supports, and then team building activities. And then talk about some case studies that I think people will probably relate to. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been in some of these situations, but it's nice to share with one another when we go through it, and to know we're not alone in dealing with these things. So a quick note that I'm also recovering from an illness, so I apologize if I cough at any point during this. I will do my best not to. So we've had a pretty good year. We've managed to retain 88% of our staff since January. I'm not going to pretend that that was easy because it definitely has not been. There are a lot of other alternative places for people to work, and settlement work can be stressful. We are exposed to a lot of secondary trauma, or we experience secondary trauma. And even so, we've had, a good job keeping people this year. We also have managed to keep people in the past. So we've got people, 5 of them, who've been here for over 5 years. One of them has been here for 32 years. And she is just somebody who truly deeply cares about the mission of CIS. But we did have a lot of challenges with turnover in 2021. My predecessor left in 2021. We also had, the operation manager leave. A number of people on the front line also left. A lot of people were burned out. COVID had seen an enormous amount of change. I'm sure other people experienced that as well. Everyone kind of has a limit as to how much they can take. And on top of that, we had a lot of compassion fatigue. So when I started in January 2022, my #1 priority really was addressing burnout and team building. It was very clear to me from the outset of my starting there that this was the most important thing for the team. So I'm sure, like many other people here, we have some core values that are really great to build on. We value empowerment, we value respect, and we value diversity. We embody those qualities as well. We hire a lot of clients, which I'm sure many of you do as well. And I think that creates a team that is really strong and has a lot to share with each other that we can always build on. So some of our staff were very kind. I did a little survey and I asked them why they stay. And that was a great thing that was able to come out of this being asked to do this presentation. This is another opportunity to check in with staff about what it is that they like working at CIS for. So Lorena, who works as our reception and communications coordinator, had worked in a lot of traditional corporate jobs for years. And while she found her work fulfilling, she found it easy to move full-time to Couch and Intercultural Society. The reason why is she was looking for a company that respects boundaries, yet is flexible enough to support staff's growth and development. She's also a newcomer herself, so she really feels fortunate that her current role is close to her background, and working with the diverse accepting staff was a premium. Sophie is our Swiss worker. She says, for me, the CIS team is a loving and supporting family. It might be funny to others, but we address each other as cohort, and I do feel we are always in it together. I don't think I can find another place, or at least not easily, where every idea and every piece of effort are very much valued. We encourage each other a lot because we all want to work together to help others. This is Christine, who is our longest standing employee, 32 years. She says, people ask why I keep working at the Couch and Intercultural Society. I believe in the important work CIS provides for the community. We have a supportive work environment that keeps me here too. The original financial coordinator kindly trained me when I could barely speak English. Many board members have come through to support the association over the years, and my coworkers are kind, funny, and genuine. As well as I have seen many dedicated executive directors in the office. Currently, it is Amanda Vance. She creates a positive atmosphere with her team building activities, provided a 5% increase to all wages, and increased wellness days and sick time for all of us. Amanda is supportive and demonstrates that she too believes in the work of CIS. For these reasons and more, I look forward to celebrating my 33rd year in June. So there's a whole host of strategies and activities, and I have had to really make this a priority every day. It's not something that you kind of do once and then that's it. It has to be ongoing. One of the most important things I'm sure we all know is regular pay increases, in this case adjusted to inflation. So I do want to thank IRCC. They did give us 5% last July and another 5% starting in April. And so, in the net, people are going to be making 6% more. It's not completely equal to inflation. However, it's pretty close. And I knew that this was something that was absolutely necessary to start retaining staff when I started. That doesn't mean that I think we all make as much as we ideally should. And I just want to acknowledge that as well, that, we lose people to the public sector because those wages are definitely more competitive. And it's really important that we continue to push our funders on this point. Benefits are really obviously necessary. We make RRSP contributions. We have a health benefit. We have cultural days off. The health benefit we administrate ourselves, and so we're extremely flexible with it. 10 days of sick leave for full-time employees. That was doubled when I started. It was 5 when I was there. Advancement opportunities. So sometimes I can't make somebody a manager. I can find a way to change their title in a way that looks really great on their resume. I've offered leadership training, not just to managers, but to all kinds of staff, and they really enjoy it, and it's great to have on their resume. I also like to let lots of staff have supervisory experience. So if we hire students, they can work with people who are a youth worker, not just a manager. I think that's a really great experience for people to learn together as well. Paid mental health days, this is a huge one. I increased those when I started. I'm very flexible about when people take them. Making external coaches and experts available to people is something else that we can just pay for people, and it makes a huge difference to them. And other regular professional development opportunities. We did motivational interviewing this past year. We always offer any kind of training that comes through from IRCC or RSTP. We're just try to make it as accessible to people as possible. And then I wanted to highlight increased prep time. I'm sure for other people as well, working with teachers, that is one of the key complaints, is that there's not enough prep time. So I did really go to bat to increase the amount of prep time for teachers, and it made a huge difference. So team building activities, this is something that it took me a while as a leader to fully understand the importance of, because I can be a little bit focused on the outcome. You know, we must get this thing done. So it can be hard sometimes to just make time for fun, but I have noticed that it makes an enormous difference with people when I schedule fun time. And so all staff meetings start with a game. We've done diversity bingo, anomia, word memory games, stretching exercises can be really funny. I like to get ideas from everyone on the team about what it is that they want to do. And we've had a lot of fun starting our staff meetings. Like, everyone gets kind of loose and giggly, and the whole meeting goes better after that because of it. Sophie had mentioned the cohorts. I really like having nicknames for a team. It's kind of like having a team agreement. It just creates this shared understanding and a shared identity. And I think that's really powerful. I really like to make time to celebrate holidays. Not everyone, but almost everyone in our office celebrates Christmas. So, you know, that's a good example of where we really went all out. We had a Secret Santa sock exchange, which was really fun. We did a tree decorating in our lobby. And at that, everyone was sharing stories from what Christmas was like in their different countries of origin. And that was a really interesting learning experience. We also had a staff party at a board game cafe. Everyone got a free hot chocolate. It was really fun. We also found some games that we really like and that we then ended up buying to use in future staff meetings. We don't just celebrate holidays, we do a lot of goodbye parties. So we had a baby shower for maternity leave, but also whenever we have students come and go, we do little goodbye parties for them. And it's just a really nice moment for everybody to have in their day, just to enjoy each other. We have a monthly success meeting where everyone gets to do an activity together. That might be yoga or art. Sometimes it's going for a hike. We also like to share our own success stories, either clients or personal ones. And then finally, I'm a big believer in introducing one another in strength-based terms. So every time somebody comes on, I like to have my staff introduce each other to the new person, leading with something that they know is a strength of that person. And it's really nice just to hear positive things about one another. And sometimes people are put in a position where they have to say something nice about somebody who maybe they weren't getting along with. And I also think that that can be a good moment to just kind of remind ourselves about what's, you know, good in each other. So emotional supports. I'm sure a lot of people do this, but a lot of regular scheduled check-ins. I also have hours where my door is just open, and I always encourage people to come in during those hours. We have a group therapy session once per year that we're doing with a mindfulness development coach, trauma-informed care workshop. I'm going to talk more about that later. This is one that I got from my one of my board members. I keep chocolate in my office and I'm very liberal with it. It actually makes a huge difference. People really love just sometimes being surprised with a Kit Kat or something like that. We also like to have, food in our staff meetings. So that might be coffee, that might be fruit bowls, it might be donuts. We do different things depending on the day. Hybrid work is needed. I'm pretty flexible with people if they want to work from home. It was hard to bring people back into the office from remote work. Some people weren't comfortable. So trying to meet people where they are, if they can do something from home, then that's great. Also, if I can tell someone's feeling a little stressed, it's good to just let them work from home for a little bit. Creating new positions to diminish workload. This is just about rebalancing workload. I did find that this was necessary. In my performance reviews with people when I first arrived, I did hear a lot of people saying, I just have too much on my list. There is no way to do it. And it's really tiring. And yeah, I think sometimes you just have to let certain things go and fight to get some funding for a new position. Emphasizing a culture of learning through handouts by email. So I like to send out different things that I've come across in leadership trainings that I've done. One of them was 25 ways to develop a growth mindset. When I sent it out to people, I saw that a few people hung it up in their office, and I thought that was really nice. So just sharing things like that as they become available to me, I do find that people respond to it. Spontaneous connection. I'm really big on just going out for a walk with someone if they come to me with an issue. We don't necessarily have to have the discussion in the office. And I find it's not just good for them to get out, it's really good for me to get out. Sometimes it allows me to think a little bit more freely when I'm not in my usual space where maybe the issue has taken place. It just gives me a little bit more flexibility in my mind. And speaking of flexibility, high degree of flexibility with vacation time, grief leave, use of health benefit, and scheduling for parents. The last one in particular is something that I really believe in. I let parents do their, put their kids first, basically, as much as possible. And I find it makes a big difference to them. And then the last one is something really simple that anyone can do all the time. And it's just regular, genuine, positive feedback in the hall, in emails, in person, in group emails. I do find that the more I say nice things to people, the more likely they are to say them to each other. And it doesn't have to be always performance related. Like I do find just commenting to someone that I really love their scarf today or something really changes the mood. And people then do it for each other. And it just creates a bit of a snowball of positivity, I guess. So all of that sounds really good in practice. It can be a little bit more difficult. So we did have a situation recently where I had to call the ambulance because one of our clients thought she was having a heart attack. And then it turned out later on that she was not having a heart attack, that actually she was having a panic attack. But everyone there definitely felt that sense of urgency that this person was experiencing. And the people who were in the room, the staff who were in the room, were really deeply affected by it. So there were a few things that I felt I needed to do right away. One of them was to offer access to a counselor on the company, totally anonymously, but to some of the people who were there. I also, made sure to follow up on it in a staff meeting, more than one staff meeting. We reviewed our emergency protocols, found that people definitely needed, regular review of those in order to know what to do when we're in a crisis. And, we also gave permission to people to leave early if they needed to that day, which one person did take that option. And then finally, I realized, okay, I got to do this trauma-informed care workshop quickly. So we're working on this right now with a clinical counselor. Attendance for frontline staff is mandatory. We're reviewing case studies and practicing different mindfulness techniques, learning particularly how to respond to anxiety and panic attacks, how to balance our own empathy and advocacy, and also a deeper understanding of our personal motivation to help. I think that last one is a really key point because one of the strengths of our organization is that, we do have a lot of people who deeply believe in our mission, and that's incredible. But it also is very easy sometimes for people to overdo their care. I think it's safe to say, and I'm sure other people have experienced that as well. You know, everything feels like an emergency all the time, and that's a very stressful headspace to be in. So why is it that we always really want to help? What do we get out of it? Things like that. The workshop is going to be followed with individual therapy sessions. It's not mandatory, it's just possible for people to access individual time with the same clinical counselor who's leading the workshop. So one of the great things that came out of this, this workshop is that she said, okay, can you please collect some case studies? And it was a really great opportunity to talk to people about things that I didn't necessarily know were going on that were stressing people out. So the question that I was directed to ask them was, have you ever had a situation recently where you really wanted to help a client, but you were unable to help and you felt overwhelmed by the possibilities or lack thereof? And I got some really interesting feedback through the course of this. I was very surprised to learn, for instance, that some staff had been asked for money, not just from clients, but from a homeless person who was coming into our office and desperately needed help, and that some of them were actually giving people money of their own. This is just a sign of how much people care what this group of people is like. They're deeply caring people, and they just find it very hard to say no. And we had another instance with a client that was just so anxious, and the ELM coordinator was trying to work with her on improving her English level. And she said, every time I talk to this person, I feel like she just gets more and more anxious. I don't understand, you know, what I'm supposed to do to break up that anxiety. I'm not the best person to give her those answers, so I was able to pass that on to the clinical counselor, and I think she'll do a much better job of it in the workshop. And then we also had situations where I found out that staff were volunteering their time outside of work hours to drive clients to various places because they were afraid to take the bus. So different situations like this where I could just see that staff were really sacrificing themselves sometimes in order to take care of others. And while I really appreciate that they do that, I also have worked very hard in the last year to communicate to people that I actually really don't want you to volunteer. I appreciate that you care that much about your job, but volunteering will have a greater cost down the line. And I'd really love it if you could contain the work that you do to our work hours. So there were some really great conversations that came out of that. So in general, it's just all about fighting burnout. Rebalancing workload, I have taken away, like I've just had to let things go sometimes. We are all short-staffed, I'm sure. There is always more work to do, and at some point it will not necessarily always be finished. And so sometimes I have had to say no, even though I would really like to do something, a project, collaboration. I think when I do that and set those boundaries, that's something that the staff really appreciate. And I know that I appreciate it myself when I set boundaries. Sometimes I let things go and I just instantly feel so much better. And so that kind of leads to the last point. It's definitely not just for frontline workers. I myself have to really watch myself and make sure that I'm taking care of myself, because I can talk about self-care as much as I want to people, but they will watch what I do. And if I am constantly overworking, they will emulate that as well. So those are just some of the things that I have learned over the course of this very intense past year. So one of the things I've realized is that at the end of the day, even though you're cutting out work, it sounds like maybe you wouldn't be doing things that you need to be doing, but that's not actually been my experience in the last year. The less stressed people were, the better service we started providing. We actually started meeting more of our targets. It's a little counterintuitive because I think people think if they're working all the time that they're going to be doing more. But in fact, you stop thinking as clearly and prioritizing as well. And sometimes you start missing things that need to be done. And so I've just found that in the last little while, being very conscious of not pushing it too hard has actually resulted in better care for our clients and also for each other. that's it. If anyone ever wants to chat, I would love to chat with you. You can reach out to me, Amanda, at cis-iwc.org. Maybe you also have ideas that I haven't touched on or just want to commiserate. I'm sure we have something to talk about, and I'd love to meet you. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, AMSA. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda, for sharing and for some of those really practical, ideas, and for really sharing what's been happening within your organization, for like opening the doors and letting us hear a little bit what's happening. So we want to take some time. We have about just under 15 minutes left. And so we wanted to just take some time for some questions. And so they can be questions for either of our presenters from today, Rita, Diana, Andrea, or Amanda. And so we welcome you to post them in the chat. And so we've been receiving some throughout and have been collecting those. And so maybe I'll just start off, and this can be, whoever would like to jump in and maybe start. For all of you, how do you handle denial when an employee is not able to acknowledge that they're going through a difficult moment or time? I don't know, maybe Amanda, do you want to start, and then we can head to either Andrea or Diana?
I think it's very personal. I do have one person on my team who can be a little bit like that, like really loves to see everything through right now and has trouble resting if it's not finished in the moment. And I find for myself what has worked best with this person is commenting gently on it, usually in a nice way. Like, I really appreciate that you really want to see this through, but I do remember that you also really want to get home to your child today. And I just wanted to remind you that that was a priority you shared with me. So it's different with everyone though. I just want to say is that I don't have one size fits all strategy. I find I have to read people very carefully and listen to them very carefully to figure out what is the word that'll connect the most with them.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of to add to that is is just offer opportunities to, what would allow them to finish the work and have their personal needs taken care of. So someone to work with them, join them on the team, extending a deadline, just asking them what would work. So both could be accomplished, the professional and personal need.
Just also just to give the reassurance to the person that the work that they're doing is really important and helpful, but that personal boundaries are a part of the job as well. So,
And I was going to add, it's important to be specific too, if possible. So if you do want to sit down with them to say, hey, you're doing a fantastic job, but I noticed the other day that you were, not as enthusiastic as you usually are. And do you want to share what's going on for you? And if not, I totally get it. Let me know if I can be of support. But try and be specific, and that way they don't think that all of their work is not being done well, that it's just more one example, and then maybe you can work through it and then find out more as they share.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And kind of an addition to that question, it's sometimes for some staff, dependent on what's happening in their own personal lives, work and overworking can be an escape and a coping mechanism. And so, how do you support staff through that phase where you're wanting to make sure that you supporting them and not taking away that coping mechanism for them if that is how they're dealing with something as well. What somebody shared is a staff person is going through some personal challenges in their family, and one of the ways how they look to ensure that they are able to handle that situation is to escape into work and overwork. And so how do you handle that when you're not wanting them to burn out, but you're not wanting to take away the mechanism that's right now supporting them in coping with their current situation?
Yeah, it's important that again, when you do those check-ins, if you ask them, say, hey, how are you coping with stress? And I'm noticing that you're working a lot these days. And, as an organization, we're trying to get everybody to work within the hours so that you don't burn out. And so is there anything I can do to help look at your work day, maybe fine tune what you're working on, relook at your projects, your objectives, whatever it is that they're doing in their job, sit down and reevaluate it and ask them what we can do to shorten the hours or what they need to do in order so that they're not overworking, and using that as a way of coping with whatever's going on in their personal life. And then offer them support elsewhere outside of the workplace. So is there anything else that we can offer you outside of work? Just a little reminder of these support systems in case you want to access them.
Okay, thank you so much, Rita. I don't know, Diana or Andrea, if there was anything that you wanted to add.
Not
I
me.
think it's just helpful to just really, as a supervisor, manager, to really make sure that you have those really honest and open conversations that can identify people's feelings as well, and just say, how are you feeling? That can be really helpful as well to help people to identify where they're at with work and how they're feeling about it. And I think it's very tricky because sometimes people will feel like they're being sort of judged or attacked for things that they don't, and that just adds more stress to their situation as well. So it's really delicate, I think. And yeah, maybe it's also how you're addressing it, thinking about your tone of voice and not alienating the person, so that they feel that even though work is their place of comfort right now, maybe that is for right now, and it will change. So it's these things can happen, and just maybe monitoring can be helpful as well, and just having them know that you're there for them when they're ready to talk.
Yeah, thanks so much, Diana. And then one of the next questions is really like a practical one. So maybe Amanda, will go to you first just to see how you would handle this. And so one of the questions is, like a manager leader within the organization, they've started to notice, based on some of the burnout symptoms, they started to notice a couple of them within one of their team members. And so how do you approach and kind of start that conversation, and and how do you get involved in supporting staff without wanting to offend them or being like, and label them that, you're experiencing burnout, when they're like, no, I'm absolutely fine. Like, how do you really start that conversation from a very cultural and from a cultural understanding, but also from a very sensitive place, without labeling somebody?
Thanks. So one of the things that I would probably do in that situation that served me really well is to make myself vulnerable by admitting that I have done the same thing too. So I might open the conversation by acknowledging that, I have a workaholic streak in me, and sometimes I overdo it a little bit. I can't help but notice that you've been working really hard lately as well. And I think that often just acknowledging that it's not like that I do it myself, and that I've noticed some of myself in other people, they actually respond really well to that, kind of regardless of their cultural background. It's not putting them on the spot. It's just having a conversation about how I have felt in the past, and how at the end of the day, that actually really didn't serve me in my work or in my career. I've had a lot of success with that personally, that approach, but I'm sure there's lots of other approaches that the others might be able to speak to as well.
Yeah, and Amanda, I just wanted to add to that, and I think that's an excellent example. And I work with the Jim Pattison group, and one thing that was really, really impactful was when the CEO, who was experiencing imposter syndrome and burnout and all sorts of different issues, he he announced it to the entire company that he was having mental health issues. And he said, you know, I'm experiencing this. And if you are, this is what we have to offer all of you. And so opening it up on a broad scale, and maybe at a meeting or in training or whatever, so that person doesn't feel isolated right away. And then you can work your way to that individual contact. But opening it up by sharing that, hey, I experience it too. You're not alone. And really a point, Amanda. I think that's a brilliant approach.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda and Rita. Just wanted to see Diana and Andrew, if there's any final thoughts to that question that you would like to add before we look to wrap up.
No, I think it's a wonderful approach. I think that offering that vulnerability is super helpful and also flattens the hierarchies, which is, I think, in community work and particularly, it's really important to know that we're all in it together.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just saw a question as well in the chat around a checklist and assessment. And so there is, following this webinar, we are putting together, and as Rita mentioned earlier, a handout with some various different resources, and there are some different checklists and different pieces that we're going to be sharing with everyone. So that will be coming out following this webinar. So we'll definitely look to try and include something there, what you also mentioned as well. So just wanted to say thank you so much, everyone, for participating in our Supporting Settlement and Integration Frontline Staff and Wellbeing for this webinar for management and leadership. And so we would like to say a special thank you to all of our speakers, to Rita, Andrea, Diana, and Amanda. Thank you so much for sharing and for being open and vulnerable with us today. I'd like to thank the AMSA team, our LMB, AV tech, and interpreters for supporting us. And just wanted to also finally thank our funder, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada as well today. And thank you so much for your time and for participating. We hope you found value in today's event. Thank you, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.